All this work session to order. First thing, the local law number 4 of 2018 regarding the creeks. I have to give you background why we did that. It's not that we wake up in the morning and say, what new law can we make now so we can make people upset? Actually, last year, everybody probably remembers a flood that we had that made people evacuate around Norton Place and around Water Street. Yes, sir.
Speak up, I can hardly hear you.
All right, now, better?
That's better.
Okay, thank you. All right, so what I was saying is that it's not like we wake up every morning to see what new law we can make so we can make you upset. This is in response to some complaints that we had last year. So you remember the flooding that we had when people had to evacuate their homes? It was a night, and I don't remember exactly the date, but people around Norton Place and Water Street had to evacuate for a night because of the flooding. And of course, the flooding was because of the bridge on Water Street was blocked by debris, so the water had no place to go, and we flooded. That was not the only problem. Over the next couple of months, people came to this meeting right here, as you see over there, to complain about debris that came into their property, and then they had problems. They were afraid that they were going to flood, and sometimes they did. And they were asking for help. Well, the thing is, the village cannot help because this is all private property. Have no way of coming into the creek and cleaning it. So what I did was, first of all, I called the county asking for some help regarding that bridge, which is inexplicably having that thing in the middle. But anyways, I found no help from there. So the next step was to call the DEC. The DEC, I don't know if anybody called at any time. It's not very easy to work with. So what they told me was, it's nothing you can do. The people have to do it themselves. However, they can use heavy machinery. They only can do it by hand, and they have to get a special permit from the DEC. I didn't think that was very helpful, so I came back. I discussed it a little bit, and then the village hired a floodplain engineer. He was not an engineer. Manager, yes, a floodplain manager, actually the only one who is certified in the county of Chautauqua, to give us some help. So he walked, if you watched the last meeting, he walked the length of the creek. He talked to the DEC. The DEC agreed to waive the permit and gave the village the names of 3 contractors who can do the work according to the DEC, without the village being in any way or any shape or any form part of it. So pretty much that's it. That's why we came here to this law. Please understand that I have no personal feelings about this law. I have a house that is on the creek, so it's going to affect me as well. I have the maps from FEMA, and the maps from FEMA very specifically name us as either 100 or 500-year plan, which means we have a possibility of either 1% per year for flooding or 0.1%. My thinking is only that when we flood, everybody has to pay. Because guess who cleaned the debris from underneath the bridge when those people were evacuated? All of us. We called St. George, Mr. St. George, and we all pay for it. So it's up to the board, totally up to the board, what they're going to do. This was, again, a reaction, an answer to a complaint. We came to this room 2 or 3 times, and to my phone and to my computer quite a few times. So with this background from me, I'm going to leave it to the Board of Trustees to discuss it. Do you have anything to add?
No, ma'am.
All right. Mr. Esek?
You want me to start? Okay. I agree that there is a problem with debris in the creek, all right? When this resolution came over to hire the firm to do this, I was not in favor of it. I did not think this was a good idea from the start. The concept of keeping the creek clean, I agree with. The concept of how we do it, I don't agree with what has been proposed. I can't see a person who is on a limited income that has property on the creek, that debris washes down from Arkwright or Leona or their next door neighbors onto their property, and we're holding them responsible to clear that up themselves or to hire somebody to do it, which they can't do. And if they don't, what are the penalties? How do we enforce that? Do we throw that person in jail? Do we fine them? Do they pay the fine and just pay the fine that's less than taking a tree down or removing the debris? I don't know.
No. Actually, what you do is you let the neighbors have the right to take them to court. The village does nothing.
Anyhow, I really don't feel that we should put the burden of this removing of debris on the homeowners and require them to do that. Require them, I guess, is what the big word that I have a hang up with. If somebody's able to do it and they see something in their creek behind their house and they're able to remove that, great. What we're really not addressing here, and it's been talked about, is the bridge. And that's the big problem here. The bridge that was put up back in 1975 or 77, and we've had floods for 50 years. It just hasn't been this last year that we've had devastating floods. We've had devastating floods like 2 years after it was built, and years and years and years thereafter. It's caused millions and millions of dollars of damage. And unfortunately, the bridge is in good condition. About an hour ago, I spoke to County Executive George Borello, and I brought this matter up. And it is a county bridge. It's on a county road. Those bridges are controlled, and the counties has to take care of them. The only bridges that they don't have to take care of are like on state routes, like 20 and 60 and 5. Obviously, he said it's not in their budget right now to replace that, and I get that, but we need to start working on that process of getting that replaced, even though it is not deficient. That's the problem. Now, as far as removing the debris, I totally agree the debris should be removed from the creek. Now, we have a tree trimming company that we contract out that trims trees and makes sure trees above on land are safe. I don't know the technicalities or legalities of it, but I would propose to have a service maybe once or twice a year with the approval and the authorization of the homeowners to go on their property in the creek to remove large debris once or twice a year. The problem is if you require the homeowner to do it, this week we have a large rainfall. It washes debris down. They take care of it. A week later, something else washes down from the creek. You know, at what point does the homeowner, are they able to afford to remove this? It's just a non-enforceable that I don't know how we would enforce it. What are the penalties? And I just can't see throwing somebody in jail or fining somebody because they are unable to do that. So my proposal would be to hire a service like we do with the trees on land to go once or twice a year to clear the creek. I know it's not going to keep it clear all the time. Do that and then move forward with contacting the county and the state and to see when we can get that bridge replaced.
So is the DC going to be okay with that, the tree service going and clean it?
They are right now. If there's 4 tree services that are contracted, they're able on that list from Mr. Gould to go down there. I'm saying to have one of those services once or twice a year to go down in the village, from the village line all the way to the creek bed on all the village property to see what needs to be cleared out and do that once or twice a year.
And you're proposing to put it on the budget?
It would have to be put on the budget, and that would be something that the entire village would have to pay for, but it's something that we need to do, and I think working towards getting that bridge replaced is where the ultimate fix to this whole solution.
Thank you. Mr. Briggs?
For someone who's lived on the creek for over 20 years, I can tell you from experience that the creek is a moving, living animal. It moves side to side, it moves up and down. And people that live along the creek, obviously we have a large crowd here tonight that lives along the creek. And I think the problem not only lies in maybe the debris that had fallen during a recent storm, but after a creek resides, the banks have all eroded away. And I'd be sitting on my back deck on a warm summer night when a breeze comes blowing through and I can hear 4, 5, 6, 7 trees drop in the creek. So it isn't a situation where the creeks constantly have an issue with what comes down during a rainstorm. This happens all the time. The banks erode from one side to the other. My dad had property on Liberty Street for a lot of years. And one large storm came through and it literally took out, I would say, maybe 75 feet of his property. And it altered the direction of the creek. Now the person on the other side of that bank is now responsible for the erosion and the trees that fall down that normally wouldn't have fallen down if that storm didn't wash out his bank. So I don't believe that this is a responsibility of the tenants or the landowners along that creek section. This law affects all of us. It doesn't affect just you from Water Street all the way to Canada Way. This law, if it goes into effect, will affect everyone from here all the way down to the village. Even though we don't have the issue anymore on Risley Street, I also believe what Doug Essex says, that our problem is the bridge. And the bridge has been a problem for us for years. And if there's some way that we can work harder to lobby or work with the county and fixing that problem and not have the burden on the residents, is kind of where I'm going with this.
Everybody agrees about the bridge. I mean, my first contact was about the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow, I can tell you. And I put another phone call today, actually, to Mr. Borello. So when he answers, I'll let you know what he said. Mr. Lynn?
Okay. The creek is, I agree, that it's definitely, the bridge is a major concern in this community. But it's the trees that block the creek, the bridge at the creek, in the creek, and make the water rise. If we could mitigate that issue to some degree, it's possible until that bridge is replaced. Just having the bridge replaced may not prevent all problems that trees cause, but the possibility of mitigating the issue for the entire village, for the people who continue to have the problems of having the floods, and if there's a possibility of mitigating that issue, I think that we should all take a look at that. The issue of as far as going on people's properties, there's a problem with going on people's properties. You would need easements to do so. I don't see, you'd have to have an easement for every single property owner down there for the village to go on their property to make changes on their property. So how do you get the problem, or the issue dealt with? Whether there's requiring if you don't require it, nobody's going to do anything. If you require it, and to what degree and how do you cover the cost? Currently, like I said, the creek is a public access property, actually, just like your sidewalks. Your sidewalks are the same. Currently, we provide a portion of the replacement of a sidewalk if you're going to have a sidewalk replaced. But you would be the one that would be replacing it, and then the village would then reimburse you a portion of it. I might think that it might be worth looking at as if we could do a percentage sort of like that, like they do with the sidewalks, to help ease the cost on that. There's tree services that are available that are certified to do it, but you would be contracting with that tree service. I guess I don't believe that the village would be able to contract for everyone because of the easement issue.
I think the proposal is to get the tree service and go from one end of the village, wherever we start, to the end of the village, to wherever it ends, and clear the whole thing. I have no idea how much money this is, no clue whatsoever. But if Mr. Essie wants to find out and give us.
I'm sure it would be a lot, Mayor, and Jim's proposal would also require it be put in the budget too.
It would
Even though it's a
requi-
proportion of.
Well, it wouldn't, equipment budget, it would be just like the sidewalks, we would have to have somewhere in the,
The only difference between the sidewalks, Jim, is when somebody replaces a sidewalk because it's damaged and we help them replace it, that's good for like 30 years. Now, if we help somebody replace a tree.
right.
Or,
No,
I'm
I-
sorry, remove a tree
Remove
from
a
the
tree.
creek. Next
may
week,
be-
do we do that again?
It may be clear for 30 years, and it may be, and it may be cleared, no, and it may be.
No, it's not gonna be for 30 years, but the problem is
But
this. It's not gonna be for 30 years, but the same tree service, let's say it's gonna cost $10,000. For the sake of argument, I think it's gonna cost more, but let's say $10,000. Well, next year you have to go and buy and go the same service again, don't you?
However it works out, Mayor, I mean, it may be 10,000, it may be 2,000, depending on the debris, it may be 20,000, I don't know, but this is for discussion, and this is for public review, and this is something for the public to consider. This is just a thought. This isn't a local law that I'm creating right now. This is my opinion and my thoughts. So the public is, when it comes to public portion, to discuss this, and tonight's meeting and at the public hearing, please give us your thoughts.
Other communities have done this. That's why the gentleman who was here that spoke with you at the last meeting described what they have done in other communities that had flooding issues. So they went through and they required some upkeep on the streams, the creeks and streams. If you own the creek and stream, they found a responsibility to upkeep that creek and stream. So what we're doing is looking for ways to mitigate the issues. We don't want to put a burden on anyone, but we don't want to see the same people flooded a year. You know, the floods seem to be coming more often, and the issue is that these trees do fall in the creek, and they do get washed down, and they do cause blockages. Somehow they have to be let loose so that the water can flow. And it may be at the bridge or may not be at the bridge, but of course, yes, currently one of the biggest issues is the bridge in the village, and I think we should aggressively go after the county to try to get that changed. But there is other things that can be done in the meantime, and that's what all I'm doing is looking for is a solution to try to mitigate the problem so it isn't as bad into the near future or until something can be further done.
Thank you.
That's about all.
Ms. Christina?
Yeah, I think this is an important conversation that we need to be having. So the law might be good in theory, but practical, I don't think it's practical at this point. So I think we need to continue to have conversations about this, and I'm glad that everybody's here because you live with the creek, so we need to hear from you. If you have suggestions or solutions or ideas, please contact us because since I've been on the board for 3 years, this is the first conversation that we've really had about the continued flooding that we have. And it's becoming a problem more and more. So we do need to look at what to do. We have to do something. Maybe this particular law isn't the thing that we need to do, but we need to do something. So again, contact us, call us, let us know if you have suggestions or things that you think would help you and would help the village.
Thank you. Dr. Barnes?
The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was founded in 1801 for the purpose of clearing waterways and providing fortifications. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has an enormous amount of responsibilities, and it's met only a fraction of them. But it is my opinion and my study of the history over decades that the proper responsibility for this problem is with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Are you suggesting to contact the Army Corps of Engineers?
Yes,
Okay,
They
and-
have
and
an
they-
office-
They did some work a few years back
Yes,
to
they did.
stabilize the banks. And
Yes,
we
they did.
still have erosion, but, we can see how we can contact them. At this point, I'm open to everything. It's not like,
They have a website and an office in Buffalo on the Niagara River,
All right.
which can be contacted.
Trustee Barris, are you saying the Army Corps of Engineers is responsible for all interior waterways or all waterways?
Yes. So, but again, they've never fully met that responsibility. So, and it's always been controversial. For example, during Hurricane Katrina, New Orleans was terribly affected, and there was great complaints about the activity of the Army Corps, which had been active there for 200 years.
I can conduct them, that's not a problem. I can conduct them and I can let you know what they told me. It's just, I want to take it very seriously, and I know you are. The creek is part of our drainage system. They end up at the lake. It's our responsibility to keep it clean. It's our responsibility to keep it open. It's our responsibility to keep it the way it was. So that's the whole discussion is for that. I'm fine even the village pay for tree services, if that's enough. I'm fine with that. I just want to address the problems of some people that they do have. They keep saying that the course of the creek changing. Yes, because of that. Because we don't clean the way. Well, I'll accept it. This is just what I read. I'm not any kind of engineer, so this is what I read, and this is what I'm saying. If you know more than that, that's fine. You probably do. I'm fine with that. Anyways, I mean, this is the whole discussion for. If the board doesn't think that this is the way we should go, again, I'm fine with it. But I have to bring it forward because people are complaining. People are sending me pictures. Look at this. This is a dam. This is going to end up in my property. This is going to end up in my, it's going to flood my property. I feel totally hopeless. I cannot do anything. This is private property. The only thing I can do is bring it to discussion, and this is what it is. So if the board doesn't feel that we have to go that way, we pull back and discuss it again. All right, so do you want to forget it for now?
Should we table it?
It's up to the board.
I would like to, I think I wouldn't mind tabling it for now, to investigate a couple of options that we've discussed. You got the Army Corps of Engineers.
Should we form a committee?
See if we can look further into with the county. I know we talked to the county executive and not a whole lot of response has been made. I mean, it would be nice to hear from a little further from the county. I don't see any legislators here, and I don't see the county executive here. I'd like to hear a good opinion from them.
Maybe we can invite them to a meeting.
It would, at least a statement. I realize it's a fairly new bridge, but I mean, if it's causing the kind of problems on a frequent basis, maybe there is a reason that they can. If they call it an emergency repair or what.
Whatever you think. That's
But I think that
totally up to you.
But there's the options here. I mean, if there's no other option, then to continue let the community have flooding.
You're going to have
one
the
person's
way to talk later.
I don't want to talk, I just want to give you something.
when one person is really happy when they're not having flooding issues. But when the person up the creek from theirs didn't clean out the debris next to theirs and your property floods, I mean, it always comes, water goes downhill. So.
All right, okay. This is not a discussion now, it just,
Or,
Yeah, it comes down. Well, then what are we supposed, I guess the question is then, is.
The village
then
should take
how-
care
how
of
do
it. We pay
handle it?
taxes, you should take care of it.
It's private property, we cannot.
What about Eagle Street? It's not private property on
What?
Eagle Street?
Mayor, can I just give you these pictures?
Yes.
These pictures are not even in the village of Fredonia. That's the CX railroad tracks down there.
Yes, I know exactly what it
And
is.
the other one is off of the exit. Doesn't matter what we do, look at that, that's why you're flooding. You're putting too much emphasis on this bridge here on Water Street. When it floods, it's full on both sides. It's not full on just one side and empty on the other, it's full on both sides. It's not our bridge.
And that's when it starts breaking trees.
It's right there.
I know this isn't the public portion, but one thing I would like to point out that keeps being said up there, it's private property, it's private property. Has anybody actually gone and looked at the GIS map? Because yes, it is private property, but majority of the property you're discussing is not owned by us residents on Liberty Street.
Right.
It's owned by a
Yeah,
single,
as you
it's
said,
owned by
as
a
you
single
said.
person that owns a 7-acre and a 5-acre parcel between Eagle Street
Right.
and Liberty Street. My property's on Liberty Street. I do not abut the creek in any way, shape, or form. I've got 175 feet between me and the creek. Ed Strasser from Georgia owns the property in there. We
Right.
don't own it.
So,
Well,
so how
he
come
passed
it's your
away.
problem? That's gonna be his problem then.
But you're telling us it's gonna be the Liberty Street
Liberty Street.
residents' property. He owns everything between Water Street Bridge and the other bridge up in
If he owns
Leona.
everything,
Then it
that's
would be
his
his
responsibility.
It would be his responsibility.
How come it's gonna be his responsibility?
Well, now, you have another issue
Okay,
here. He passed away.
You're gonna be able to talk on the actual meeting, this is the workshop, and then on the talk. So on the actual meeting, you're gonna be able to talk.
But you're gonna table it.
No, there's an open portion of
That's-
a regular meeting
this-
that you're allowed to speak on these prior.
And we can't table it now, we have to table it in the meeting. This
During
is
the
just a
meeting, yeah,
discussion.
at the point of the resolution, we make a
Okay.
motion to table it.
So, what do
So-
we, all right. We'll go further down and we discuss it, you decide where we go. Now, you want to see this picture? Mhm. All right, so we have a request from the Village Hall staff to close the Village Hall the day after Thanksgiving Day, November the 23rd, 2018, which is something that we do every year. We do every year. Then we have the abstract number 504, 505, and 506 to approve. We have the enactment of local law number 3 entitled Housing Standards. Anybody wants to say anything? And then I gave you a contract for, to hire an engineering consultant. We discussed it a little bit in, I'm not sure, the last meeting or the meeting before that. And this is to somehow have somebody that we can call when our DPW or somebody from the village, any department really, needs some help engineering, which doesn't need to go to an engineering firm. It's an easy solution to have somebody not on staff, but on contract, so we can contact them for small projects.
Can you tell me what the address of this company is?
Excuse me?
What is the address of this company? It's not in the document I have.
The address is, it's probably on the resolution, and I apologize for that.
Is Jim Sedota in the audience?
Yes.
Can you ask Jim to?
Hey, Jim.
Jim, thank you. Who was our, what was it, Rex Tallman Engineering that did a lot of work for the village in years past that could also be, I don't know if he was ever contacted or not?
That's
throughout
him.
this process?
That's what I'm
Oh,
trying,
this is Rex?
that's what I'm trying to hire.
Oh, okay. This is Rex P.
Where's
Didn't we-
Rex Stallman located?
Okay.
Didn't we during the budget? Jim, when we were talking during the budget portion of it, didn't we say we had a firm on retainer at
This
one
is not on the
time?
resolution.
Well, not right now, you don't.
We did. Okay.
But, my last term, 15 years ago, we had Rex Tallman work part-time on call with Chief of the School up in the station.
It's about the same thing what you're trying to do now.
Okay.
Yeah. Same person, same thing. Any comments?
I think it's a good
The
idea.
address isn't on here.
We need to move forward on a lot of these small projects
Right.
and just whittle away at all the small things that are life, quality of life things in the village that we can improve on. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah,
Right, absolutely, yeah.
all right. And then we have the Justice Report for September 2018. We have the Police Report for September 2018 and the Fire Department Report for September 2018.
Mhm.
Anything else that you would like to discuss?
Yes, under old business, North County Water District sent us correspondence. I thought we had discussed our reply, and that was supposed to be sent out.
I sent you an email giving you 2 dates and asking you to choose between the 2. You sent me an email back and you said, I agree, we have to meet. Yeah, I knew that, I just needed date. So I sent an email with both dates to see if they can come, and then I'm gonna contact you.
Okay, I thought they were just requesting a reply first.
No, they are very much willing to
Oh,
meet.
okay. I thought they
So,
requested a reply.
I left it open to them to either come here or even for us to go there. I have no problem doing that. So the possible dates are next Monday or the Monday after that we don't have a meeting here. I thought that would be a good way to do it. I'll let you know about that.
I'm good with either date.
Either date's fine with me as well.
Mhm.
Okay,
It's a good idea.
all right.
That way we're on the same page. with
Anything
that.
else?
Yeah, under general discussion, when you either schedule a special meeting, can we keep it at the regular meeting times here because the paper is
That
not
was a
having...
mistake today, you understand
I get that, but,
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people, there was a couple meetings ago, we had a special meeting that people wanted to come, and we were done with the meeting and people were still walking in. Is there any reason why we just can't keep it at workshop at 6:30 and meeting at 7:30 for a special meeting?
Not a specific reason, Mr. Asset. The only reason is so people can finish and go home. So it was a special meeting. We announced it. We put the time there. I understand your point of view, and I respect it. Today it was it was put on the paper by mistake, so we left it at that. Yes, I have no problem. Anything else? Okay, I have 2 more things to discuss tonight. One thing is that Nate Aldrich, who helped us a lot to put together the application for the grant that gave us $2.5 million about a week ago, has contacted me, and he is willing to provide services for the village in a contractual basis, the same way as Rex pretty much will do. And he's going to put a proposal together to see. He's proposing about 12 hours a week, probably, and then the administration of the grants that do not fall under the grants that they do provide for administration, and also help to write more grants, and also help to find more grants and all that. I think it's a very, very good idea. He's been working for us for free. It's a good idea to actually give him a contract. He's going to put together a proposal for us. I am just suggesting and proposing that we take it very seriously and actually hire him.
And he'd also be able to administer grants, so that would be a cost savings also, I think.
He's going to administer some of the grants, yes. Yes.
Mayor, with this DRI grant, I believe it was last meeting and the meeting before, you stated that the grant included funding.
I was wrong. Yes, I was mistaken, I'm
So
sorry.
it does not.
It does not, no. That's going to fall upon the village to provide the administration. But ultimately, if we hire somebody like Nate, he can provide the administration for the grants there.
Is this information given to us or given to you or whomever puts the grant application in that administration costs are not covered? I mean,
I don't understand.
you said last meeting that it was, and now you're saying it isn't. I mean, should
Okay,
this
let
be?
me make it myself clear. I'm not trying to cover anything.
No, I'm not
okay?
asking you to cover,
All
I'm
right,
just-
well, that's what we're suggesting.
I'm not.
All grants that I know, usually they have about 10 to 12% administrative cost. all the grants that I know. I did not know that this is a specific amount of money because it doesn't require any kind of match by the village. We're not going to pay anything. It does not include the administration. I did not know that. I stated wrongly at the last meeting, and Nate actually called me right after to inform me. So
Okay.
that's it.
Now Nate will be a subcontractor, or is he's gonna own his own contracting business and we're gonna hire him?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
this
We're
isn't-
going to contract with
This isn't
him.
part of his county job.
That's different.
Right,
That's-
okay. So I
he's
just
still gonna-
I just wanted it clear that Nate will be doing this as a
But he's still-
consultant in his own business.
And he's going to have his own business, but he's still going to be part of the county and part of that helping us in that capacity.
Okay.
And also, I gave you an estimate for new security services by DFT. And that includes, as you saw, because we discussed it quite a few times downstairs, actually, that the building is not very safe. So includes some panic buttons, includes some, this is not only here, obviously, includes some new door keys, some new locks, and also includes, and I would like to ask Mr. Essex about that, this is part of what you did with the DPW, I understand. Why do you think we need 16 cameras of DPW?
I did not suggest that. The personnel from DFT Security had suggested that.
Oh, that was miscommunication, that because they assured me that that was your idea and they don't want to go more than 3 or 4, which is, I think it's a very good number. I thought there was something else there. So please, look it over and we can discuss it next time. I think that we don't have to do it all together, but I think we should take some steps into making this building, the DPW, the water, the filtration plant, all these plants more secure.
So Mayor, the 16 cameras was just not for the Department of Public Works building, this is for cameras for other?
No, these are only for the DPW.
Oh, okay, because when I had contacted DFT Security to inquire about it, it was mostly cameras to monitor the brush pile on the outside and vehicles coming in, so there was no, I mean,
As I said, it was probably a miscommunication because they wrote 16 only for the DPW.
okay, well, this is not my, I'll look at the quote that the salesperson gave me, but,
All right,
okay, thank you.
okay. If we don't have anything else, can I have an executive, please? By somebody? We need to hire some people?
I make a motion to go into executive session to discuss particular.
Medical history of a specific person?
Uh,
And,
Make a motion to go into executive session to discuss a history of a particular person's employment.
I second that. I'll
Trustee
second that.
Barris,
I vote aye.
Trustee Christina?
Yes.
Trustee Linden?
Aye.
Trustee Briggs?
Yes.
Trustee Essex?
Yep.
Can you leave this down here?
Yeah. Actually, you know what?
Just a second.
Wait for Karen.
Good evening. I call this meeting to order. At the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia, duly called and held on the 22nd day of October, 2018, at 6:30 p.m. in the Trustees' Room, second floor, Village Hall, Fredonia, New York, and public notice of the time and place of this meeting has been given to the news media and conspicuously posted in one or more designated public locations in accordance with Section 104 of the Open Meeting Law. You want to state?
During the executive session, no action was taken.
All right. This is the public portion now. For people who want to talk about anything, this is not a public hearing, it's a public portion. So I would ask you to keep it to about 3 minutes, whenever you want to address the board.
Mary D'Amico, Liberty Street. I gave you a couple pictures earlier, and I sensed that you had seen them already. The point of the pictures was that when it floods on both sides of Water Street Bridge, not just one. Yes, there is a problem with the center pillar in the bridge, but if that was the sole problem of your flooding, it would be pretty much dry on the other side, the egress of it. The engineer in the study that you had done, I'm shocked that he didn't go from Water Street down to the mouth of Canada Lake Creek, or he would have solved the mess that's down there. There is nothing that you can make us do that's going to stop the flooding as long as that mess is still there in the town of Dunkirk. And anyway, that's why I wrote this. I'm opposing any law that requires a handful of residents to be responsible for the removal of trees and debris from the village of Fredonia Creeks. Consider this, because it could happen. If any one of us has to be responsible for removal of these items from the creek more than once in any given year, it could cost us more than it does to pay our taxes. Canada Lake Creek has the tendency to rise very quickly, and at the same time it goes down just as fast, leaving everything coming down from the hills in our backyard. If it gets stuck on my property line, your proposed law will dictate that I clean it up, much like a game of chance. Will I get it? Will my neighbor get it? Or will it end up in the town of Dunkirk? The Chautauqua County geographic map does not show that every property on Liberty Street owns back into the creek. If a large tree becomes lodged behind our homes, and the homeowner claims they have no rights to the creek, are you prepared to have each property surveyed to see where each property line ends? I want to be clear. I have no idea where my iron pin is at the creek, but I will not be forced to pay for removal without proof that it's actually on my property. The reason for this proposed law is to alleviate flooding. I get that. You hired a consultant to walk the creek, but in my opinion, he walked in the wrong direction. If the water is backing up, there's a reason for it, just like a slow-running bathroom sink. Something is holding the water back. Just a limited amount of investigating revealed two major problems in the creek. I gave you the pictures for your review. My suggestion is to have your consultant start at the mouth and work back to Fredonia. I'm sure he'll find more problems than what I've discovered. And I'm asking you to not move any further on this proposed law.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
I would like to talk.
Yes, of course.
I live at 299 Liberty Street in Fredonia. I just had a grant, $300 and some thousand to my wall. I have no trees on my property. All right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you get it?
Yeah.
Okay, there's nothing on there. Now, there's people there that got trees all over. How do you know it ain't coming from my own?
I
How do you
don't.
know where it's coming from? This guy that you hired to go up the creek and down the creek, he's not environment and control. Has he got a certificate? Can I see it? Does he have a certificate? Where is he? Is he here?
No,
From
he doesn't.
Hanover? Is he here?
No.
Where is he?
We had him for once. He's not part of the village. He's not employed by the village.
Why would he be employed by us trying to get the trees out of there?
He will not.
I already spent $3,500 of my money getting them out of the Liberty Street Bridge on the upper end. Why has St. George got his equipment down in Fredonia ready to go when there's a flood? That's my question. Can you answer it?
Because we don't have our equipment to clear the creek. We do not have equipment. The village does not own it.
How much do you pay him?
I don't remember, but I paid him a lot of money.
Okay, why isn't he on the Fredonia side of the bridge? Where it comes down from Liberty Street?
Because we're trying to alleviate the problem where it is. I mean, I don't understand the question.
The creek is on Liberty Street,
Yes,
all right? On Liberty Street, there's a bridge.
okay.
Why does he have his equipment down there instead of in our village? In our town, in our village of Fredonia, on the creek on Liberty Street?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Well, that's good. Now I'll ask you another thing. How many people that you know that are gonna go for this bill? You don't know that neither, huh? What do you know?
Pretty much nothing. Thank you.
Sir,
You're
what's your
welcome.
name? Sir?
Anybody else?
Sam, do you know something?
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm Christine Starks, and I wanted to just share a resource that you may or may not know about. I received many phone calls, so on behalf of others, I called my resources at the county. And I want to make sure that you know that the Soil and Water Conservation District is a resource that you can reach out to, and they have a team of 5 experts that can come and talk with your officials about flooding, erosion, and how to hopefully alleviate it. We are not the only people that have areas that flood and bridges that are in the middle of it. So please, before you move any further in any direction, reach out to the other resources that you have not yet.
Sure. Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Siskar. I moved into 274 Liberty Street a year and a half ago. And I have a few thoughts. There's really 4 issues here. First, everyone knows the major problem is the bridge. Second, the law as crafted is unfair. Third, the law as crafted is unenforceable. And fourth, it's tough getting old. And fourth, the law will not solve the problem. Okay? The bridge is the problem. How much time and money was spent investigating this? Where would we be if we had used these resources to persuade the county to rectify the problem, to do the kind of investigation that was spoke of here? Have you reached out to state senators, local congressmen, U.S. senators, et cetera, to help with the problem? Have you had a local symposium exploring the problem? Have you explored legal action? Because it appears that you decided that the correct course of action was putting the burden on those who you are supposed to represent. The law as crafted is unfair. It was repeatedly stated at the last meeting that this is akin to having citizens be responsible for taking care of a sidewalk or painting a house. A single commonality does not make an analogy, legally or otherwise. Do you really believe that using a ladder and a paintbrush on relatively level ground, or hiring somebody for X number of dollars to do it at once every 10 or 15 years, is anything like using axes, chainsaw, and the like to remove tree with a trunk that can be up to 4 feet wide on a slippery mud bank, or even worse, a slippery slate bed with water rushing around at the time? You haven't looked closely. You also haven't looked closely by those who claim they can do the work. Are they insured? What is their expertise? This is a situation ripe for price gouging. People are going to come in, the work is going to have to be done, and they're not going to have any say in the matter. It also puts it's unfair also because the responsibility moves downstream. At the last meeting, it was noted that if a neighbor's tree falls on a house, it's his or her, it's the tree owner's responsibility for the house. In this case, if my neighbor's tree falls in the creek and it moves 20 feet, it's now my responsibility. If I wait another week, somebody else's responsibility. So obviously, the closer I live to Water Street, to the Water Street Bridge, the more liability I have. More to the point, if I live anywhere on the creek side of Liberty Street, I have to be responsible not just for my debris or my neighbor's debris, but to all the debris from the 20-so miles upstream. The law is unenforceable. You yourself have said you can't monitor this land. So how are you going to know where the problem is? You can't go on the property to examine whether there's blockages. Arguably, you hired a consultant acting on behalf of the village to trespass on all this property to come up with this report.
I'm sure you got
And the basis of that report then is illegal. All of us have, all that we have to do when we're somehow arcited is simply say, please prove the property connects to the creek. And that's something that you currently can't do. So the law is unenforceable. But most critically, the law will not solve the problem.
Thank you.
You've got 20-plus miles of creek. You expect the 2 miles on Liberty Street to be cleaned out. And when those floodwaters come down, that other 18 miles of debris that's going to be coming down anyhow, that 2 miles is not going to make a difference. The flooding is still going to take place. So, I suggest more study, because what you have in place now is an unfair, unenforceable law that will not solve the problem.
Thank you. I agree with you.
Joe Holland, I've lived on Liberty Street for going on almost 20 years now, and I've watched it every time it rains. And to further emphasize what Mr. D'Amico has noted, as I've watched it rain, the flooding doesn't start because of the trees. Flooding starts because the creek isn't emptying out, and I've watched it slowly rise. And yes, the bridge is a problem. But what's going on is because the creek is rising, because it's not dumping out, that's when the creek starts to spread out and starts scraping trees. So worrying about my neighbor's trees flowing down, yeah, that is a concern of mine because I shouldn't have to pay for his trees. But what I'm saying is, yeah, the bridge isn't a problem. The problem is on the other side of the bridge. Get that taken care of, and then you'll eliminate the creek spreading out and scraping trees off the properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Dennis Chekla. I live on Liberty Street. I've been there for over 45 years. I've observed a lot about the behavior of the creek. I had 3 trees on my backyard that are no longer there. They got into the creek and they were gone before I would have had any chance at all to cut them up or do anything with them. The problem is not necessarily the debris. When the creek floods, the current washes away, takes standing trees, deposits them in the creek, and they just go bobbing right down the creek. Another point that I wish to make is that previously the village did clean at the creek, and then they were told to stop by the DEC because the pieces that they were cutting into, they're cutting the logs into, were finding their way to the lake, imposing a hazard for the boaters. Also, if you enact this law where we are responsible financially for keeping the creek bed clean it's going to devalue our property enormously. Who's gonna wanna buy my house when they know they have this thing hanging over their heads? You're gonna make a very, very serious mistake if you do that. I also feel that the law discriminates. You're posing to make one group of people pay for the inconvenience of another group of people. I have sympathy for those people that get flooded, but I don't think it's a responsibility of a small portion of the village to have to pay for their problem.
Thank you.
Gus Pokovic, Porter Road and Liberty Street. I spoke with the mayor this morning briefly, but I still want to ask the question. If the village is going to assume responsibility for this and share it with the property owner, okay, what would stop anybody, a fisherman, because it's a great stream to fish, what would stop anybody if they fall in the creek to have their attorney say, you know, the village has got some pretty deep pockets, and maybe we should look into, because they have this responsibility in this law, maybe we should look into going after them. I mean, don't shake your head no, because anything's possible, okay? And I thought that was a great point he brought up about devaluation of your property. You know, that's a great tourism stream, okay? We want to try to promote it, you know? So now what you're telling people is, who wants to buy a house where I'm going to end up have this extra expense every time something happens? You know, I just, nature made the stream.
Thank you.
You know, and you're welcome. Nature made the stream, but you know, really, if I was to, I own a small section, but I own a tributary of about 20 acres of watershed that goes into that stream, which is in your law, okay? So I'm basically going to be responsible for that end of it. But if I was to own a bigger section, I would be a little proactive, and I would cut down all the trees. Because why would I want a tree coming or staying right there in my property that I have to remove? So now you're diverting the water because you're creating erosion for the creek bed, which is not even legal to even step foot in that creek and pick up a rock and take it home with you. So I think you need a little more research, and I think you start listening to the people in the village of Fredonia.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Dave Nataro, 230 Liberty Street. I moved in '79. That's when it flooded. So that was my introduction. It made a lot of noise, sounded like a motor running. It was terrible, you know. So, you know, from that, for a few years later, there were more floods. The sidewalk analogy, really, I don't think it works because a sidewalk doesn't move. When it rains like it does and floods, something's going to move in my creek, but my neighbor's busted sidewalk is not going to come down and replace my sidewalk that's intact. So that really isn't a good comparison. The bridge wasn't under your control when it was made. You know, a lot of mayors had that responsibility, and I've heard you say it before, and I agree. No one did anything to replace it, to fix it. I don't know what they didn't do, or what responses they got back. It was a simple no when you talk to these people. Then you go, you know, walk out the door and say, I did my best. I don't know. I have no idea. But I think that it's your responsibility, you know that. You're elected and you're stuck with some of the things that weren't done in the past. I get that. But you got to put some effort into being strong or getting us involved somehow, letting us know what we can really do that might make a difference. Cleaning the creek out. If I thought that would fix the problem down at the bridge, I would agree with it. But it won't work. If we cleaned it out, the next day it comes, as I said, a flood comes through, it's all changed, and you get the same problem. You're going to spend the same money cleaning that bridge out, no matter what we do inside the creek. And in 1972, there used to be an arch bridge there. I couldn't find a picture of it, but an arch meant there was nothing in the center of it. So when they built the new one in '78, they put a center pier in there. I don't know who could say no to that. I don't know how you stop that. But a lot of people knew that was wrong, but it was built that way. And when trees go down there, they go down the long way. So if there was an arch, they would just simply go through it. With a center pier, if they hit the center, they're going to turn and they're going to clog up, and you got a bridge that fills up with sticks and everything else that goes down the creek. So it's not you know, Mother Nature does what it does. I agree with everything everybody else here said, but it's not our problem to go down and pick up sticks, a tree. If it was my tree that fell in the creek, I would cut it up and get rid of it. But if I see someone else's, if my tree didn't fall in there and I need to take care of someone from wherever, that's not my responsibility. I clean out the storm drain in front of my house.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Julie Manino, I live on Liberty Street, and we've been there for about 35 years. I've seen some of the floods, but in researching the situation a little bit more, I discovered that in '79, before we came in, there was a very serious flood. And just to remind you, some of you probably experienced that as well, but I think sometimes in looking at that creek and seeing so gently coming down, you forget the force that is there at the time of the flood. And the '79 flood was studied quite well, and a report was issued in '84. But that's the observer reported that because of that cluster of heavy thunderstorms and strong winds, for 2 to 3 hours, 42 bridges and culverts were destroyed or damaged. 23 sections of roads were washed out, 1 person died, and $10 million of damage occurred. $5 million here in Fredonia. Now, when you look at that and then you study it further, and they say in the report, normally 5,000 cubic feet of water will go through a regular flood. That flood brought 12,000 cubic feet per second. And you say, that's a lot of force coming down. In some of the serious floods, you saw the trees come down like they were just toothpicks, just floating down. When they get to the bridge, and it was mentioned earlier, we had the arch bridge in '72 was replaced with the existing bridge. And in looking at the report, I noticed that they studied and they indicated that the square area within the bridge that would allow anything to go through, the amount of water going through, was about equal to the arch bridge. However, they missed the critical point that that pillar in the center, again, if you have witnessed the flood and seen how those trees and shrubs wrapped around that pillar, and it was tough for the claw of St. George trying to pick up that debris. It was very difficult to untangle it. Now, again, one would question it. Why not have a straight bridge? We certainly can make bridges a lot better and take the traffic that's needed, but it wasn't done. So I think the bridge is a real concern, and Mr. Essex has indicated it is a problem. It should be looked at carefully. And, and again, the report was commissioned by the Department of Transportation. It was issued in '84, and it studies the whole situation. Now, when you come down to cleaning, and by the way, and looking at the dimension and the force, I kind of get overwhelmed. And then, you feel like you're part of a community, and you sort of expect the community to work with you in that situation. If you throw that back to us and you atomize and individualize us, you're creating a crack in the fabric of the community, and it's very important. So, yes, it is a problem. Maintenance will be the key, but there are going to be some floods where we need to know that you're going to back us up, not by throwing the responsibility on us, but search for the resources needed. Some ideas have been proposed. We need to search those. The DC says, don't go into the creek and mess up the ecosystem. So be careful with what you do. Okay, well, okay. So we're in conflict here. You're asking us to do things, and then, again, the only way you can correct and maintain it is by creating a program of maintenance and see how it can be resolved. But,
Thank you.
I wanted to
Thank
share
you
that
very
thought
much.
with you.
Anybody else?
Hello, I'm Marie Chekla, 234 Liberty Street, Fredonia. We came here a month ago as neighbors to a community, we're gonna have a neighborhood watch because of a jug problem on our street. I take offense to your comment that we should turn neighbor into neighbor and sue if we think that they're liable for what's on our property. That's just what I want to say. I take offense to that comment.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Glenn. I own Maidenford Spring right at the bridge there. And I do not think this is fair I take the blunt of everybody's trees coming down for me to pay for removal. That is not right. I've seen many, many trees in there, and there is something you guys can do, preventive maintenance. You got to get somebody to, if you know a storm's coming, you inspect the creek, look for possibilities of downed trees or something's going to block it. Don't just expect us to pay for it. That's
Thank you.
not right.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Dreyer?
I've got a bad back, so if I have to sit down, please excuse me. Sam
Sure.
Drayo, Fredonia resident. I agree with what Dennis Chekla said about devaluing properties. If you put a law in the books that says the village code enforcement officer can go up and down and inspect your property and tell you what to do with the with debris that's along the bank, people are going to think twice. Do I want to buy a house subject to those restrictions? So I think it will have a value. That went through my mind, Dennis, wherever you are. Yep. But I'll try to make this brief. But prior to 1979 or 74, the old Water Street Bridge never had a middle span. I think we all know that. In 1974, can't believe it, but I was village attorney in 1974, and I was here, so I'm a witness to what happened. The village constructed, or the state of New York constructed, the center span. Prior to that date, there was not a center span. As we all know from past experience, that they were negligent, there was a negligent design that caused flooding as debris gets caught in the middle span, causing the waters of Canada Way Creek to overflow its banks. That's happened on at least 3 or 4 occasions since its construction. Considerable damage was created by the presence of the center span. The village didn't object to the construction of the bridge with the center span, although to his credit, Mayor St. George questioned the bridge, questioned its design after 2 Fredonia citizens came to the meetings. I was there when they came, Gerald Boardway and Robert Tadd. And at least 2 or 3 meetings, they forcibly told the mayor and the board, please do not let the state put that center span in because it's going to be a problem. Mayor St. George questioned that design with the state engineers, and they told him not to worry. We're the engineers, Mr. St. George. You're not the engineer. The village now wants to mitigate the potential for flooding by requiring by force of law, subject to penalties, that any debris on a landowner adjoining the creek be removed by the property owner at his or her own expense. I'm going to sit down because my back is starting to act up. To be very clear, it's not the adjoining landowner who causes the log jam at the bridge and subsequent flooding. It was the state who built the bridge with the center span. Prior to the construction of the center span, there was no flooding. To now place the responsibility of removing limbs or trees along the bank of the creek to mitigate a problem originally caused by the state is unjust and simply wrong. If there is any debris in the creek or its bank that the village deems a potential hazard, the village or state should assume that responsibility as our government to prevent a log jam at the center pier, which the state constructed and which is a public facility. The question of who is to determine what debris is a hazard? What is the criteria? There's an article from the Department of Environmental Conservation that states not all woody debris is a problem. Woody debris, such as trees, branches, and stumps, is an important part of natural and healthy stream systems. In the upper reaches of streams, such debris increases channel roughness, dissipates energy, slows floodwaters, and reduces potential for flooding damage downstream. The material also forms a basis for the entire aquatic system, ecosystem, food chain. Woody debris that poses little risk to infrastructure is best left in
in place, thereby saving time and money for more critical work at other locations. Hanging trees, natural material wedged into banks, and stabilized wood debris within a stream should be left alone. And this article shows where there's similar to the Water Street Bridge. That needs, of course, to be cleared out where the obstruction is. But they also shows trees crossing the creek, and which are no hazard to anybody. In fact, it states under the article, woody debris that does not pose a problem should be left in place. Knowing this background, the village did not object to this bridge. The village should step forward when needed to prevent any flooding until the bridge is reconstructed without a center pier. The village should assume responsibility for removing any debris that is risky for flooding by removing that debris that it feels is objectionable, not threatening the landowner who was not the cause of the flooding and did not construct the center span. The Water Street Bridge is a public facility, and the village should assume responsibility for keeping it safe by removing any obstructions or debris it feels could pose a hazard, not the village residents.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anyone? All right, so I close the public portion. And I want to say in my report, first of all, thank you. Thank you for all these comments. Somebody said I should listen to the people. These are the people. I do listen. And I'm here to support you. I'm here to support you so your properties not get devalued, but get more value. Your voice today gave me much more power when I go to the county, because I did go before, and they told me no. Now, I'm not known to take no as an answer, but it's very difficult. You here today with every comment, and I agree with all of you. I do agree with every comment. You gave me the strength, you gave me the back, you're backing me up to go to the county and not taking no for an answer. So tomorrow morning, I'm going to call the county again. I'm calling on this board to not adopt this law, not even go to the public hearing, and that's going to be up to them. However, I agree with almost everything, except the fact that I'm trying to make people go against each other. I do not. I want the value of your property to go up. My taxes are going to go up if they do. So I am standing behind all of you, and I am going to talk to the county again. I'm going to talk to the Senate again, the senator of the area, Ms. Young again, and report back to you as I should. This is a great meeting. Thank you very much for coming. So having said that, let me finish with my report. I'm going to tell you some happy news. First of all, our steps are almost done. After a year plus, since June of 2017, the problem started, the steps are almost done, and they were done quickly, and they were done by a local person, and they were done quite with not much expense. So I'm very happy about that. Something else that I want to report is that in the last 2.5 months, we hired the following individuals. We have a new DPW director. We have a new work supervisor. We have at the DPW. We have a new MEO at the DPW, a new laborer at the same department. We have a new water filtration plant operator. That plant was neglected for years. This is the time to start working on that again. This is our water. We drink that water. We have to make sure it's good and clean. We have a new village clerk there. We have a new deputy treasurer. We have a new part-time code enforcement department clerk to help with that. We have a new wastewater treatment plant operator trainee that we're going to hire today. And we have a new utility worker for the wastewater treatment plant that was also neglected. Now, I have to report to you that out of all of these people, only 2 were not in the budget. Everybody else was in the budget that the board adopted this past May. So having said all that, that was my report. And I open it to the board. Dr. Varis? Ms. Fritz?
No, I have nothing this evening.
Yes, thank you, everybody who came today to voice your concerns and your thoughts on the creek cleanup issue. This is your village. Thank you for coming. Under my report also, myself and Trustee Barris were part of a Portland Pomfret Dunkirk Sewer District contract that we're working on currently. We're getting some updated figures from our treasurer, Mr. Sedota, to update and look over a little bit more. And we'll be meeting with the PPD board once we meet with Jim, and we'll continue on that. I think that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Gard, do you have anything?
No, thank you.
And now I'm very happy to say that we have the first report from our Deputy Treasurer, who is going to talk a little bit about what he did in this last month. And even more importantly, he has agreed to give the board a monthly report on the budget that was never done before. So, well, it was done by you, but all right, Mr. Sedota.
Okay, well, first of all, we completed the annual report for the village, and it has to be filed with a clerk, and it's available to the public for your information if you want to see the financial affairs of the village. It's easy reading, it's just a bunch of numbers, but it does indicate that the village is in good financial position, and very briefly, the main operating funds are the general, the water, and the sewer fund. And in the general fund, there was a small loss in operations of $111,000. The budgeted anticipated loss, however, was $590,000. So we didn't come anywhere near the budget projections, thank goodness. But the water and the sewer funds both generated profits. So overall, we've increased our financial condition among the three funds. I'm not gonna, it's a pretty lengthy report, and I'm not gonna bore you with a lot of the details, but that's the highlight is that we are in good financial position, and I am going to be presenting the board with a monthly budget report showing what the budget that they approved compared to what we're actually expending year to date. And it'll enable them to get a better handle on where we are financially during the year. And also the department heads will be getting a copy of their budget so that they can better manage and control their spending patterns. So that's all I have there.
Thank you very much. We have a healthy fund balance, and with many projects coming our way, healthier than we thought actually, much healthier. And with many projects coming our way, Mr. Segura is going to help us organize our finances in the most responsible way. So thank you very much for that. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Sedota?
Thank you, Jim.
Very good, thank you very much. So, we're going to reports. We have the Justice Report for the month of September 2018. And according to that, the court generated $15,327. They had 4 civil cases, 11 village ordinances, 34 criminal cases, 2 environmental, 95 vehicle and traffic, 6 ABC, and in a total, as I said, 152. We have the police report for the month of September 2018. And according to that, there are incidents reported 746, 24 accidents, 49 arrests reported, 35 vehicle and traffic, and 92 parking tickets. And then we have the fire department report for the month of September. We have 1 fire, 151 rescue and EMS, 5 hazardous conditions with no fire, 12 service calls, 20 good intent calls, 36 false alarms and false calls, with a total of 225 incidents. And these are 4 reports. Now, this being the time and place for the public hearing of the proposed law number 3 of 2018, entitled Housing Standards, Proof of Publication Zone. Apologize, too many papers here. And this is
Do we
it.
receive a correspondence? Do we receive a correspondence during the shared memorial VFW post? Is that something that should have been announced?
No. Thank you. I call this public hearing to order. I will ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes, please. And who is the first to come? Mr. Gallo.
John Bello. I'm here representing the Fredonia Landlords Association. I wrote to all of you and dropped it off for all of you today so that you'd have a little bit of time to think about some of my comments and some of what our group has come to you with. Now, first of all, giving credit where credit's due, you have made some changes to the law. They are important changes, and we really appreciate it. You have been very responsive to our very, very serious problem with a tenant registration. Thank you for dropping that part. We appreciate it. You'll notice from my comments that we are not objecting to the landlord registration portion. It's not in my comments, and it's not there for a reason. The village already knows that information. The village already does inspections of all rentals on a, I think, every other year basis, if I'm not mistaken. So we're not objecting to it because you already have that information. The difference is that you've put in penalties for people that have not registered. That's the difference. Whether or not that catches up any that are unregistered, I simply don't know that. I believe that everybody is already required to be inspected, and if they're not, there's already penalties. But we're not objecting to that. What I'd like to convince you to do tonight is to start over again and do this in a different way. The landlords are more than willing to participate in a discussion to try to solve what you think are the problems. This law doesn't solve those problems. This law does a couple things that are very important, but it does them in a way that perhaps increases the problems themselves. Now, there's a lot of confusion about the law. There's a lot of confusion, and that's not our fault. There's confusion because some of you are walking around saying different things. You're interpreting the law. You're interpreting the law because it's not clear. There's a requirement that new laws be clear and unambiguous, that the terms that are involved are defined. Now, you're making changes, but not defining the new terms. And there's one in particular, the very significant change that you've made changes maximum occupancy, an undefined term, by using not the habitable space, which is a defined term from the prior code, and now it bases maximum occupancy on bedrooms, and bedroom size in particular. Unfortunately, my interpretation of what a bedroom is and what your interpretation of a bedroom is are both perhaps very different. I think a bedroom's a room with a bed. Your code enforcement officer has a different way of looking at it, and all of you may have a different view, in fact. That's why you define the terms. And the bedroom is an undefined term under the code. So you've literally changed the rules without telling your code enforcement officer what those rules are. It's now up to an interpretation. That means that the first time that anyone at least has the money willing to fight, that you charge somebody with this, there is an automatic vulnerability, an automatic lawsuit that gets drawn. Again, they have to pay for it. Not everybody will choose to fight. The code has to have these terms defined, and it's just not defined. Additionally, you've added this new section onto an existing set of rules, but there's no designation, no determination. It's not set out how the new rules interact with the old rules, and you have to do that respectfully. By adding stuff on, you've made it so that perhaps, and we had a very nice discussion today in the mayor's office, there are at least two different interpretations of what happens. And in our discussion today, Mr. Linden was thinking one thing that I actually agreed with him on his interpretation, and the mayor was thinking a different, and they were both telling the truth, of course. They just were reading it, seeing it differently. That's not what you guys can do. You can't do that. You can't make a confusing situation, and you're certainly not going to fix any problems if you do so. Last but not least, you've made a choice to put more burden, more power, more on the police department to enforce zoning rules. Now, I've been before this body in the past arguing for more funding for police. I know many of you agree there's just not enough money. I understand. But you're now putting onto the police the obligation to enforce zoning rules. They need to pay attention to the stuff that I listed in the letter, the meth labs, the burglaries, the real problems that we have, and respectfully, this stuff isn't even on that list. Unfortunately, to solve the problems that we have with a zoning code, you actually are saying we need new laws, which I grant you might feel that way, but you don't. Just enforce the ones that we have, and we'd probably be just fine. You've taken a very important step by adding a new zoning officer. Very important. They're 18 months behind on their inspections. I think that's what they're behind. They're behind, and that's our fault. We have to pay for that. If they did that, we'd be way ahead. Now, by giving that power to the police, not only are you giving them more to do, but you're also, well, you're not implying it. The things that some of you said during the last meeting were very clear. You blame the landlords for the problem. That's not the right message. They are taxpayers, they are pillars of this community, and they're voters. They're not the problem. And I think you need to walk that back a little bit. Are there problem landlords? Of course there are problem landlords, and you have an apparatus to deal with them in place. But blaming the landlords for the problem is just wrong-headed. And I think you need to walk that back. And I think with respect to this law, I think we need to walk that back too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. So I close the public hearing, and we go to resolutions. What are you going to do with the first one? I propose to just drop it.
I think we should drop it.
I make a motion to strike that
Right.
local law currently for more vetting.
I second that.
All right.
I'm sorry, which law are you dropping? I didn't hear that.
This is the flood
The
damage
creek.
prevention
The
regulations.
flooding protection.
I'm sorry.
I vote aye.
I vote aye.
Trustee Linden?
I vote aye.
Vote aye.
Trustee Esk?
Yes.
All right. So, I'll put it down. All right.
You're next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Who's going to introduce
Middle of
him?
the page.
Can you read that?
Yep.
Oh, wait, I didn't. Be resolved that the Village Hall offices will be closed the day after Thanksgiving, Friday, November 24th, 2018, and that each village employee will use a personal vacation day.
I second that.
I vote aye.
Trustee Christina.
Yes.
Trustee Linden.
Aye.
Trustee Briggs.
Yes.
Trustee Essek.
Yes.
Be it resolved that the regular and overtime payrolls of the various village departments and bills approved by the Finance Committee and set forth in abstract number 504, number 505, and number 506 are hereby approved and directed paid.
I'll second that.
I vote aye.
Trustee Christina.
Yes.
Trustee Linden.
Aye.
Trustee Briggs.
Yes.
Trustee Essek.
Yes.
Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia are desirous of amending the Charter 179 housing standards of the Village of Fredonia to provide, and whereas a public hearing has been duly called and held before this Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia on the 22nd day of October 2018 to consider the question of enactment of proposed law, local law number 3 of 2018 of the Village of Fredonia entitled Housing Standards. And whereas proof of publication in the Observer of the notice of public hearing on said proposed law has been presented to this board. And whereas proposed local law number 3 of 2018 of the Village of Fredonia in its final form has been laid upon the desk of the members of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia at least 7 calendar days prior to this date. And whereas after due deliberation, this board seeks to enact said proposed local law. Now, therefore, be it enacted by the Board of Trustees of the Village of Fredonia as follows.
We don't have to.
I'm
read
not
that.
going to read that.
Okay. Who seconds it?
I'll second that.
Trustee Barris.
I vote no.
Trustee Christina.
I abstain.
Trustee Linden.
I vote aye.
Trustee Briggs.
I vote no.
Trustee Essek.
Before I vote, there was a lot of compelling information that was given both last meeting and this meeting. And I just want to make it clear, if I gave the impression that I blame the landlords, I think I hold the landlords responsible for the people that they rent to, if that was kind of mistaken or whatever. But I don't believe the cost of it will give us the benefit that we're requiring, so I vote no.
All right, so it was defeated. Let's go further down.
Whereas the Village of Fredonia has an immediate need for the services of an on-call engineering firm, and whereas Patriot Engineering is willing to provide said services according to the attached agreement on a case-by-case basis, therefore, be it resolved that Patriot Engineering is hereby designated as the village's engineer of record.
I'll second that.
Trustee Barris.
I vote aye.
Trustee Christina.
Yes.
Trustee Linden.
Aye.
Trustee Briggs.
Yes.
Trustee Essek.
Yes.
Okay.
Be it resolved that Everett Reardon, Clinton Street, Westfield, New York, is hereby appointed to the position of wastewater treatment plant operator trainee at the hourly rate per the CSEA contract of $16.70 with benefits effective November 5th, 2018, and subject to civil service rules and regulations and to a probationary period of 6 months.
I second the resolution. I vote aye.
Trustee Christina.
Yes.
Trustee Linden.
Aye.
Trustee Briggs.
Yes.
Trustee Essek.
Yes.
All right, can I have an adjournment?
If there is no further business, I move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Trustee Barris.
Aye.
Trustee Christina.
Yes.
Trustee Linden.
Aye.
Trustee Briggs.
Yes.
Trustee Essek.
Yes.
Hi.